a raucous crowd this morning. Good morning, and welcome to First Church Unitarian in Littleton, Massachusetts. My name is David Gaynor, and I am honored to serve as a member of the Standing Committee. It's great that you have found us today and that you are joining us for our hybrid service, and we particularly welcome any newcomers to our wonderful church community. Please read our Community Matters newsletter, which is available in today's order of service, where you will find the information about our religious education program and other church activities. Please note that the donation period for the FCU talent auction has begun. Make your donation by April 19th so that it can be included in the talent auction, which will run from April 23rd at noon to April 30th at 6 p.m. And a reminder that the 1619 project viewing of episode 3, Music, will take place tonight at the church from 6 to 8 p.m. Our service today is entitled Hiding in Plain Sight. Thank you and welcome to church.
In a poem, one line may hide another line. As at a crossing, one train may hide another train. That is, if you're waiting to cross the tracks, wait to do it for one moment at least, after the first train is gone. And so when you read, wait until you have read the next line, then it is safe to go on reading. One lilac may hide another, and then a lot of lilacs, and on the Appia Antica, one tomb may hide other tombs. In love, one reproach may hide another. One small complaint may hide a great one. A vivacious mother hides a gawky daughter. The daughter hides her own vivacious daughter in turn. They are in a railway station, and the daughter is holding a bag bigger than her mother's bag and successfully hides it. In offering to pick up the daughter's bag, one finds oneself confronted by the mother's and has to carry that one too. When you come to something, stop to let it pass so you can see what else is there. At home, no matter where, internal tracks pose dangers. One memory certainly hides another, that being what memory is all about, the eternal reverse succession of contemplated memories. Pause to let the first one pass. You think, now it is safe to cross, and then you're hit by the next one. It can be important to have waited at least a moment to see what was already there. The words of Kenneth Koch, "Let us worship." I'd like to invite Isabel up to light our chalice this morning. And as Isabel lights our chalice, please say with me the words of our covenant. Love is the spirit of our church, and spirit law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Thank you. Welcome. Good morning. I join with David in welcoming you here to First Church Unitarian in Littleton, Massachusetts. So glad that you've joined us, and welcome to those of you who are with us online as well. Today is gray but still lovely, and it's good to be here. My name is Lara Hoke, pronouns she, her, and I'm so happy and lucky to be the minister serving this incredible congregation. So I'm glad that you're with us too. And if you're with us in person for the first time in the sanctuary, please join us afterwards in the vestry. Just follow us out there for coffee and fellowship. If you're online with us for the first time, I hope that if you haven't already, you'll go to our website, fculittle.org, and find lots of information there, including ways to contact us if you wish. All right. So this morning, our topic is hiding in plain sight. And it made me think of our opening song. I invite you to rise in body or spirit as you're willing and able, and we'll sing Nowhere Man. There's an insert with the words and also on the screens.
Knows not where he's Can you hear me? Okay. I have to talk right into this, so hold on. The girl who never made mistakes. Now you will. Awesome. You'll be the first to know. For Beatrice Bottomwell, Friday began like any other day. She matched her socks, and of course, she put her shoes on the proper feet. She remembered to feed her hamster Humbert his favorite food, broccoli. And when she made a sandwich for her brother Carl's lunch, she used exactly the same amount of peanut butter as jelly. When she stepped outside to greet her fans, she didn't forget to say, "Good morning and thank you." They asked if she'd made her bed. She had. They asked if she forgot to do her math homework. Nope. What about tonight's talent show? They asked. I'm ready, said Beatrice with a smile. After all, her juggling act had won 3 years in a row. Most people in town didn't even know Beatrice's name. They just called her the girl who never made mistakes. Because for as long as anyone could remember, she never did. Unlike Beatrice, Carl made lots of mistakes. He ate his crayons and drew with green beans. He danced with his hands and played piano with his feet. Carl loved to make mistakes. Yeah. At school, Beatrice was on a cooking team with her 2 best friends, Millie and Sarah. To make their giant rhubarb muffins, they needed 4 eggs. Beatrice went to the refrigerator and carefully chose the biggest, eggiest eggs she could find. But on her way back, her legs slipped out from under her. The eggs went flying. Beatrice was about to make her first mistake. But she didn't. That was close, thought Beatrice. Sorry, Beatrice, I dropped a piece of rhubarb. Oh, mention it early. The rest of the school day, Beatrice could not stop thinking about her almost mistake. On her way home from school, Beatrice watched Millie and Sarah ice skating in the park. Come join us, said Millie. It's fun, said Sarah. Beatrice watched them slip and slide on frozen pond. Millie and Sarah laughed as they wobbled on the ice. No thanks, said Beatrice. At supper, Beatrice barely touched her food. Everything all right, kiddo? Asked her father. I'm worried I'll mess up tonight, said Beatrice, and everyone will be watching. Worry? You don't make mistakes, he said with a smile. Beatrice tried to smile too. After supper, she got ready for the talent show. First, she woke Humbert from his nap. Next, she got the salt shaker from the kitchen table. Finally, she filled the balloon with water. The school auditorium was packed. Beatrice felt her stomach jumping around inside her. Beatrice waited for the juggling music to begin. That's her, the girl who never makes mistakes, said a woman. Oh, we know she'll be perfect, said a man. When the music started, she tossed Humbert into the air. Next, she added the salt shaker, and finally, the water balloon. Beatrice didn't miss a beat. The crowd clapped with delight. But Beatrice noticed something odd about the salt shaker. The specks that were falling out were not white. Achoo! Humbert was so surprised by his sneeze that he grabbed the water balloon with his claws. Go Kabloom! Humbert, pieces of water balloon, and pepper rained down on top of Beatrice. For the first time in as long as anyone could remember, Beatrice made a mistake, and it was a big one. The music stopped. Beatrice didn't know what to do. Cry? Run off stage? The crowd sat stunned. They couldn't believe that the girl who never makes mistakes made a mistake. Beatrice looked up at Humbert. He looked back at her. His hamster fur was soaked and speckled with bits of balloon. Beatrice let out a giggle, and the giggle grew into a chuckle, and the chuckle became a laugh. And the people in the crowd looked at each other, and then back at Beatrice, and they began to giggle, then chuckle, then finally roar with laughter. Beatrice and the audience laughed until they couldn't remember what they were laughing about. That night, Beatrice slept better than she ever had. In the morning, no fans greeted her, Beatrice. She got dressed. Beatrice, for no reason at all, put a polka dot sock on one foot and a plaid sock on the other. Beatrice and Carl made sandwiches. This time, they put the peanut butter and jelly on the outside. They called it an inside-out PB&J. Lunch was messy and delicious. Later, Beatrice found Millie and Sarah skating in the park. They fell a lot and laughed. Now, people no longer call her the girl who never made mistakes. They just call her Beatrice.
Hi, I'm Araya Foss, and this is Kathi Geisler. She contacted the church, contacted the Council on Social Justice to see whether we would do a share of the plate. Actually, she didn't ask about that. She didn't know about that. When I heard this, I was very excited because as I get older, I keep wanting Massachusetts to pass the bill to make it possible to have medically assisted, because I'm getting older and older. Medically assisted dying, I can say that word. So as I get older, I'm waiting for that to happen. And so here we are. Kathi is a UU person, and so she reached out to us UU people. So, right up there? Yeah.
Okay, is that good? All right. Well, good morning. It's such a pleasure to be here. I was here pre-pandemic for your movie discussion nights, which was about the same time you were getting a new called minister. So there was a lot of excitement going on here. And it was just a pleasure for my partner Jerry and I to come and see all the great turnout for the movies. I'm a very recent volunteer to Compassion and Choices. So this is actually the first gig that I'm coming to. I did have a letter to the editor published in the Lowell Sun about the bill, and I was happy about that. And reached out here because I knew with the church to see if we could come in and talk about it. I am just so impressed. All of your programs and everything's already in here. So I hope you all had a chance to read everything about us. I'm just so honored to be here and was thrilled when I was asked if we would like to be a recipient of Share the Plate. So how could I say no to that? It's great. So as I'm sure you all know, the option of medical aid in dying is to avoid prolonged pain and suffering. We don't have the bill yet in Massachusetts, but we're pretty darn close. The governor approves it, and I encourage all of you to write your legislators. We're very close, and we're very hopeful for this year. And that's a big piece of what Compassion and Choices does. But there's a whole nother half, and this is the support that we can give to people. Coming out here, raising awareness, give education. Our website is chock full of all kinds of information, resources. As a new volunteer, I go there and I watch all these videos so that I can learn things, so that I can come out and speak with groups. So it's just amazing. And one of the most important things on there is a resource to help for people who have some early dementia or are fearful about having dementia later down in life. And I encourage you all to really take a look at that and get your preferences down in writing. Because part of this bill, which you'll learn a lot more about from Sarah after services, is you have to be of sound mind to make this choice. And if someone is very ill with dementia, they won't be able to ask for medical aid in dying. So this is a website, please go to. There's forms you can send to your legislators. It's really great. Everything we do is free. I think it is up there, yep. We actually have consultants. If you find yourself in a no man's land and don't know what to do and need help, you can call and get all kinds of free information and help. There's very few staff. Sarah, who's with me today, and we'll speak with you later, represents a lot of states, and she has another person with her. Everybody else is volunteer, so it's great. So why am I interested in this now? Well, I was into my 60s before I had any close person pass away, so I didn't think people died, you know? I mean, we really kind of don't talk about it, and we don't really acknowledge it, and we don't think it's really going to happen. So I was very late in life to have those experiences. My father died the death we all want to have. Peaceful, at home, loving, with support, minimal pain. My mother, however, who lived in Utah, my father was in Georgia, it was a complete nightmare. And she had a very rare progressive spinal cord disease, not ALS, but a cousin to ALS. And by her 60s, she was using a wheelchair part-time. And by her 80s, she was full-time, not walking, needing help with daily living, and lots of other support, having more and more pain, and getting bed sores. And if any of you are familiar with people who are in chairs a lot, bed sores are often a cause leading to death. So she had to go to rehab because these bed sores were down to the bone, and she was in a lot of pain. And my sister lived near her in Utah. I was, of course, out here, and flew out. And one of the issues Sarah may talk about is the medical people don't necessarily make the right decisions. They want to treat you and they want to cure you, but they don't necessarily know the right things to do. So my mother went to this rehab, and it was clear she was going downhill, a lot of pain, and she got hospice care to come to the rehab. Did the rehab staff pay attention to the hospice? No. They would go in, put her in a harness, lift her up in a harness so that she could be weighed. Why did she need to be weighed if she was going to not have much more time in life? And she would scream in pain. And my sister and I had to leave the room whenever they would come to do that. We didn't know we had the right to say, don't do this. And this is one of the things you're going to learn about in our program, is there are options and choices, and you can take control, but we didn't know any of that. One of the times we left the room and she was screaming, "I'm getting raped." Of course she wasn't, but to her she was. Then hospice allowed more morphine, and we would ask the nurses to come in, and the nurse was on, a substitute nurse was on, and he wouldn't give it to her. He said, "We don't do that because we don't give morphine to hasten death." So she had to suffer longer. She finally stopped eating and drinking. Took her about 2 weeks to pass. And so that was my first experience in person like that. I have one more short one I want to tell you, and because then I do have a 2-minute thing we want to put up for you. I have the same disease that my mother had. Fortunately for now, it's just affecting my walking. I'm fine otherwise, and that's great. I won't tell you how old I am, but I think I still have a few years left to go. But I know with my mother's experience what's probably down in store for me. And I belong to a support group for people with spinal cord injury and spinal cord disease, and we meet on Zoom. And there was a woman in the group who's quadriplegic, living in an assisted living place, having a lot of pain, other health conditions. She wanted to die. She had no friends. She had no relatives to advocate for her, but she would come to our Monday night meetings. And she was out of control of being able to do anything to help herself. Well, she took control. She got into her power wheelchair one day. Well, she got into it every day. One day when she was in her power wheelchair, she went out of the assisted living place. She drove herself down about a mile to the cliff, and she rode her wheelchair off the cliff into the ocean. That was the choice she made, and she took control. Nobody should have to take control like that, none. So I decided to get involved with this movement in honor of these two women, in knowledge that I myself may want to use medical aid in dying down the road, and I want to have that option. We're so close in Massachusetts. If you haven't let your legislators know how you feel, please do it. The form's already made for you, and it's online. So we have a 2-minute little slip I'd like you to see before I go back and sit over there. So thank you.
At Compassion and Choices, our mission is to improve care, expand options, and empower everyone to chart their journey at the end of life. We envision a society that affirms life and accepts the inevitability of death, embraces expanded options for compassionate dying, and empowers everyone to choose end-of-life care that reflects their values, priorities, and beliefs. As the leader of this movement, we work with national and regional community groups, state legislatures, the United States Congress, major national organizations, state courts, and the healthcare community. Our programs seek to improve and authorize medical aid in dying across the country. We seek to close the disparities gap in end-of-life care planning so that all communities can finish strong and transform how we die with dementia. Everything we do at Compassion and Choices is about inspiring people to claim their voice and agency in end-of-life care. We believe that the path to change starts with the individual, which is why patient-directed care stands at the core of all we do. We educate the public about the importance of documenting one's own end-of-life values and priorities, and by providing essential information about the full range of options available. Compassion and Choices is working towards an America that respects everyone's right to make their own end-of-life care decisions in consultation with their doctors and loved ones. We defend existing end-of-life options from efforts to restrict access. We advocate for expanded options to ensure everyone can die according to their own values and priorities. At Compassion and Choices, we help you write your own story.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kathi. So any cash that you put into the basket, the plates as they come around, will go directly to Compassion and Choices, or you can also make out a check to Compassion and Choices and put it into the offering plates as they come around. This morning's offering for Compassion and Choices will now be given and received in grateful appreciation. Please join with me in the words of our community response. We are grateful for the opportunity to give and serve, and grateful for the gifts we have received. May this affirm the ministries of our church community, both within and beyond these walls. Most weeks, this congregation shares an important time that we call the Candles of Caring. This is a chance to feel once again our connections to one another and that which we consider holy. If you have an important joy or concern that you'd like to share with us this morning, please raise your hand high enough that we can see it and tell us your name and let us know briefly how we might direct our thoughts, prayers, or healing wishes. And if you are on Zoom, you can raise your hand in the reactions area of Zoom and also share a joy or a concern. And we'll light a candle for you up front. Are there any candles of caring this morning?
Okay, thank you.
All right. Then I'd like to ask Martha to light two last candles. The first one is a candle of joy. This is my wife Emily's birthday. I guess I shouldn't have done that. So the next candle is a candle of concern that I did that. And then one last candle to represent all those joys and concerns that are with us this morning, but that remain unspoken. Thank you. Please join with me in the spirit of meditation or prayer. Once again, we come together in love and trust, sharing those cares dearest to us with this gathered, beloved community. Let us hold in our hearts, our thoughts, and prayers those joys and concerns spoken aloud this morning, as well as those that remain unspoken, as we share together in a time of sacred silence. Blessed be, and amen. I'd been hearing about the AMC television show Mad Men for years. And for years, I never had any interest in it. I'd see commercials for Mad Men, and it just seemed like a show about a slick, hard-drinking advertising man and other advertising men with lots of white privilege in the 60s in Manhattan. And I really just had no interest in that. Then I'd hear from some women who knew that it captured the sexism of the workforce in that era really well. And I was a little intrigued, but it still wasn't quite enough to pull me in. But you know, it kept popping up in the recommended for you section of Netflix. And then before I knew it, my mom was hooked on it. So I decided to give it a chance. After 2 episodes, I was hooked. I ended up binge watching Mad Men like a fool. I've binge watched it a few times, in fact. And I'm only a little ashamed because it really is an amazing show. Who knew? This sermon is brought to you by AMC and Netflix, by the way. So what drew me in more than anything? It was the complicated aspect of the main character, Don Draper, played by actor John Hamm. I didn't see this coming from the advertisements for the show, though I suppose you could say it was hiding in plain sight all along. And some of what I'm going to share is up to a point a spoiler, but you've been able to stream Mad Men for more than a decade now. Plus, what I'll share is mostly things that you'll learn in the first few episodes. So, after a couple of episodes, I will say you find yourself thinking, do I even like the main character, Don Draper? Do I care about him? Is he a sympathetic character or not? And I've read actor John Hamm's own take on the character. He does not find Don Draper to be sympathetic, for the record. Everyone is entitled to their own opinion. But as for me, I do find the character sympathetic, ultimately, in spite of his many flaws. So, acknowledging some of those flaws, first of all, he's a horrible womanizer. He's fairly ruthless in his work. He doesn't appear to care much about anything other than success and life's creature comforts. He doesn't seem to have much social consciousness, and a lot of things happening in the 60s are a bit lost on him. There are other things too, but those are some of the most obvious glaring flaws. Oh, except for one more little flaw. His central flaw, his fatal flaw, his Shakespearean tragic flaw, I suppose. What is it? You learn after just a couple of episodes. Just one teeny weeny problem with Don Draper. He's not Don Draper. You see, he assumed the identity of a fellow soldier who died during the Korean War. And in the process, he upended the life of the original Don Draper's family and his own family. Therefore, he is technically also a deserter, and there is no statute of limitations for the crime of desertion. So, his central secret of having assumed another man's identity, ultimately I find it oddly sympathetic. He was very young when he did it. He was in shock from the terror of battle. And he makes this quick decision that really becomes essentially irreversible for him. And his punishment really is having to live with this secret and the stress it produces. He's there, but he's not really there. The man he was born as, a man named Dick Whitman, is hiding in plain sight, living far from his sad childhood home, living a wealthy, swinging life in New York City. He's hiding without the use of a mask or any outward disguise. There is Don Draper, but that's not Don Draper at all. There are 2 scenes that really stay with me that sum up Don Draper's tragic predicament. One is when Marilyn Monroe, as they go through the timeline of the 60s, there's a scene when Marilyn Monroe has just died. And in a scene, Don Draper is in the elevator with a coworker, and they're discussing this death and how surprising it was that it turns out she was so miserable in spite of outwardly seeming to have it all. And the elevator operator, who is in many scenes on the show in the elevator, but doesn't usually utter a word, uncharacteristically jumps into the conversation and says, "Some people hide in plain sight." And of course, Marilyn Monroe was Marilyn Monroe, but she wasn't Marilyn Monroe. She was a woman named Norma Jean Mortensen that got caught up in an extraordinary and ultimately an extraordinarily out of control life. And if Marilyn/Norma Jean was miserable, hiding in plain sight, surely so is Don Draper/Dick Whitman. So I find him sympathetic in part because one of the tragedies of his life is that his first priority is taking care of himself and being successful and comfortable, so unlike his tough childhood. But in spite of his efforts to have it all, he's clearly miserable and very, very sad. And, as some have noted, of course, the elevator operator who says some people hide in plain sight is himself hiding in plain sight, being culturally an invisible African American in a white man's world, and being culturally invisible as a service worker in this swanky Manhattan business building. Others are culturally invisible in our society too, of course, sometimes women, the indigent, elderly, children, those with physical or mental disabilities, and so on. The other scene that stays with me from Mad Men is when Don Draper reads Frank O'Hara's Meditations in an Emergency. He sees someone reading this book of poetry in a bar. He spends a lot of time in a bar. And he asks about the book, and the person reading it says something like, you probably wouldn't like it, assuming that Don Draper is either square or shallow or what have you. But later we see Draper reading this very book, and we hear lines from the poem Mayakovsky. Now I am quietly waiting for the catastrophe of my personality to seem beautiful again and interesting and modern. We get the sense that though Draper seems outwardly confident, deep down he's full of self-doubt. It makes perfect sense, given that he knows he's a fraud. He's an imposter, literally. Ultimately, I find Mad Men compelling because I think many of us feel like imposters, at least some of the time. We feel like phonies. We feel like we're faking it. We feel like we're going to be found out and exposed as frauds. This is a very common phenomenon. In fact, some studies suggest that 70% of us experience it at least some of the time. And it even has a name. It's known as imposter syndrome. As best-selling Australian author Margie Worrell writes, if you've ever thought to yourself, one of these days people will realize I don't know as much as they think, then you're in excellent company. To give just two examples, as Worrell shares, Academy Award-winning actress Kate Winslet confided, I'd wake up in the morning before going off to a shoot and I'd think, I can't do this, I'm a fraud. And Nobel laureate Maya Angelou once said, I've written 11 books, but each time I think, uh-oh, they're gonna find me out now. I've run a game on everybody and they're gonna find me out. And of course, we sang Nowhere Man earlier, and John Lennon often felt like a failure and a fraud. So it doesn't always match reality very well. And if you experience imposter syndrome, you are obviously in excellent company. And as Worrell points out, imposter syndrome is more likely to impact high achievers and overachievers than underachievers. So if you relate to this, you're probably at least a bit of a perfectionist, at least about some things. But you're not perfect, and that's okay. No one is, and it doesn't mean that when you do something excellent, something even maybe approaching perfection, it doesn't mean that it's because of luck or because you pulled one over on anyone. Even we imperfect people can sometimes do really incredible things, sometimes. Sometimes we let worries about imperfections hide our moments of real beauty from our own view. And sometimes we let personas that are a little too perfect hide our beautiful imperfections from the rest of the world. To quote from Kenneth Koch's One Train May Hide Another, this morning's call to worship, when you come to something, stop to let it pass so you can see what else is there. It can be important to have waited at least a moment to see what was already there. Let the imperfect self go by in your mind's eye so that you can see your inner beauty hidden behind, and let your too perfect persona move along so that others can see you being real, can see your beautiful imperfections hidden beyond that public facade. There's a 1977 poem by Audrey and Rich titled Transcendental Etude. Toward the end of Rich's poem, she writes that she is homesick for herself. Have you ever felt homesick for yourself? Perhaps, as Jared Kentz puts it in his book, This Book Is Not for Sale, perhaps you're hiding in plain sight. You're right behind your clone. Now, it's occasionally true that someone feels the need to hide, not just because they're being overly modest or feeling phony. Sometimes we really do have something to hide, some deep secret. Don Draper has his secret, but an even more nefarious secret belongs to Walter White, the main character in Breaking Bad, another AMC show that I binge watched on Netflix. I binge flixed it, I like that. See, I told you this sermon was brought to you by AMC and Netflix. So that's a lot of alliteration from AMC, isn't it? Don Draper, Mad Men, Walter White, Breaking Bad, but I digress. Walter White, as you learn in the first episode of Breaking Bad, is a high school chemistry teacher who secretly makes the drug meth, or what they call cooking meth. Later in the series, in an episode titled I See You, Walter has a conversation with the character Gus, who is the head of this meth-selling ring. And Gus's day job is to manage this fast food franchise specializing in chicken called Los Pollos Hermanos. In this episode, Gus says to Walter, I hide in plain sight, same as you. Sometimes the urge to hide is powerful, even though, unlike the characters in Breaking Bad, we haven't really done anything so horrible. There's even a wikihow.com guide online describing how to hide in plain sight. It says, this article will teach you how to hide in plain sight. In other words, be seen and then instantly forgotten. Perhaps the article is a bit tongue-in-cheek. It's kind of hard to tell. But it's amazing how often we have the urge to be seen and then instantly forgotten. It's funny. We spend so much time hiding in plain sight, and yet deep down, I think we all want to be seen, at least by someone, the ones we care for the most. That's intimacy, or intimacy, as we've all heard probably a few too many times. In an article written for the online journal Tiny Buddha, Megan Yule-Rosen writes, we all wear so many masks. We wear them to fit a role, mother, sister, wife, good worker. We wear them to protect us in social situations. For so many of us, we hide ourselves because we're afraid that the truth of who we are will not be acceptable. That is, if others, even those who we trust with our love, were to see who we really are, they would turn from us. That we will be seen not as angels, but as monsters. She goes on to describe the work of Brene Brown, professor at the University of Houston Graduate School of Social Work. Brown explains that while we are all afraid of making ourselves vulnerable, study after study shows that the majority of people are truly rooting for us. They want to see the real us, she says. They admire our courage. In other words, as Brown puts it, the very thing we are protecting ourselves from could be the source of our greatest strength. You might not believe it, but being real is beautiful. We fear our imperfections. We hide them from others, even sometimes hide them from ourselves. Yet they can be our greatest strength. They make us real. As Marjorie Williams wrote in the classic children's book, The Velveteen Rabbit, real isn't how you're made, said the skin horse. It's a thing that happens to you. When a child loves you for a long, long time, not just to play with, but really loves you, then you become real. Does it hurt? Asked the rabbit. Sometimes, said the skin horse, for he was always truthful. When you are real, you don't mind being hurt. Does it happen all at once, like being wound up? He asked, or is it bit by bit? "It doesn't happen all at once," said the skin horse. "You become. It takes a long time. That's why it doesn't happen often to people who break easily or have sharp edges or who have to be carefully kept. Generally, by the time you are real, most of your hair has been loved off, and your eyes drop out, and you get loose in the joints and very shabby. But these things don't matter at all, because once you are real, you can't be ugly, except to the people who don't understand." So in closing, let today be a chance to brush off and brush up on our spirituality of imperfection. Today, let go of the perfectionism of our Unitarian forebears who grew out of Puritanism and eventually adopted an onward and upward forever mentality, as Unitarian minister James Freeman Clarke put it. Instead, today, let us embrace the outlook of our Universalist forebears, who didn't worry with perfection, but instead believed that ultimately we are enough. They didn't think any of us deserve eternal damnation. They ultimately didn't believe in eternal hellfire. They wanted to love the hell out of the world, as some modern UUs say. Remember, we learned a few years back from the book The Spirituality of Imperfection by Ernest Kurtz and Catherine Ketchum that there is something wrong with me, with you, with the world. But there is nothing wrong with that. So for the spirituality of imperfection, it's not, I'm okay, you're okay. Instead, as the authors put it, it's a case of, I'm not all right, and you're not all right, but that's all right. There's no need to hide when you're with those you love and trust. May we strive to be that for each other. May we be vulnerable together, and may we, in community, embrace our imperfections. We are loved and valued here, no matter how shabby we feel, no matter how many times we have fallen short. May it be so. Blessed be, and amen. Our closing hymn is number 128 in the gray hymnal, For All That Is Our Life, and the words are also on the screen. I invite you to rise in body or spirit. For our closing words, if you and the person next to you are comfortable, you can hold hands or touch elbows or shoulders or feet or whatever works for you. Or you can simply hold your hands out and feel the energy between us and those who are with us online as well. We are each other's beautifully imperfect, shabby, well-worn friends. So beautiful, though. I hope you know how beautiful you are. We do make our own days glad when we can be real together and let our own selves be seen. May you see and be seen as the beautiful ones you are. Blessed be, and amen.
Hello, Zoom friends. Does anyone want to be host? I don't see a raised hand. Okay, Ann Donald, fine. Thanks, Ann. Have a good week, everybody.
Someone turn the sound off.